Good afternoon and welcome to our first in-person virtual combo meeting. It's great to meet some people in person and to see them in pants. I know that sounds strange, but I think if you think about it, you know what I mean. I'm Tim Murphy, chair of the board, and we are for tenants and the public who are interested. There's, of course, still our live stream on YouTube, and delegations can participate by WebEx. I do want to start, as we always do, with the land acknowledgement and the lands we are on of traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And we, of course, acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as well as migrants and those who came here involuntarily, such as victims of the transatlantic slave trade. Do want to start and give a shout out to an incredible tenant who performed above and beyond the call in the context of a very unfortunate event where a fatal fire took the life of a person and sent others to hospital. Divakar Gopasingh, a tenant in our building, been recognized by the operations team for being an outstanding member of the community. After the fire, as staff were making arrangements for tenants to be temporarily housed in a nearby hotel, Divakar went above and beyond by helping deliver meals, toiletries, necessities to tenants staying in the hotel, bringing news and updates to his neighbors. And that kind of neighborliness is something that we don't often celebrate, but we do in this circumstance and more broadly. So thank you very much, Divakar, for what you've done and for the value you bring to our community. Do want to also recognize the incredible history and quality of our staff, and in particular the Long Service Awards. And so in March and earlier this month, for the first time since 2018, we were able to recognize long-serving members as part of the Long Service Awards program. On March 22nd and then on the 4th of April, a series of in-person events, employees were celebrated with between 15 and 40 years of service who had been accumulated that record between 2019 and 2022. And there was a great event in person where there were refreshments. I'm assured they were all non-alcoholic. The CEO, our COO, Nadia, our CPCO, Barbara, and LSA recipient, Gail Johnson, all attended and made remarks. And Gail celebrated 35 years, and I was pleased to deliver remarks virtually. But all of our employees, but in particular these of long service, are really the backbone of our tenants' first approach to our tenants, and I want to acknowledge their important contribution to our culture and their dedication and service. So thank you to all of them. I do want to take a second and acknowledge that the city is in the process of selecting the next round of board appointments, which I think the intention is to have that in place for the June meeting. And just wanted to say to the board and staff and others that I did not choose to put my name forward, so I will not be serving again on the board. And I just want to, in part because I think it was, I've become CEO of my firm, and apparently the other lawyers think that's a full-time job. But I did want to, I also feel in particular that, the organization that I was chair of 4+ years ago, and this is a much different organization. I mean, we've spent a lot of time really focusing on and putting meat on the bones and bringing to life tenants first, and I think a lot of effort has been made in that regard. I think we've done a bunch of things to get better support and services to our frontline staff to improve the quality of service to our tenants. We did a search for and found a stupendous new CEO So we're obviously very pleased with that, and in the process of building an incredible and dedicated executive leadership team that is doing some great work. So feel very confident that it's in great hands. Improved the business processes at the place, including through the implementations of homes. And of course, what everyone expected to have happen, we had to adapt to, which was the pandemic. Okay, maybe not expected, but it was an incredible response by the organization, by the staff, in terms of helping our tenants, of vaccine program. I mean, whenever I go out and talk to people, at TCHC's efforts in dealing with its staff, providing assistance, providing vaccinations and information is one of the models. So it's an incredible, reflection on the quality of the organization, the employees, and its leadership. But I do want to also, I feel like the stories of TCHC are getting better too, that are, the kinds of programs and services. I was just flipping through, our social media, and you've got YouthWorks and accessibility programs and Build brand and scholarships and midnight basketball, all of these programs that are, I think, somewhat unsung, but are an incredible reflection on the service and quality that TCH is bringing to its tenants. So I feel like I'm not leaving the organization, but I'm going to admire its growth and talent and ability from afar. So I just wanted to let the board and the staff know that I believe I'm leaving an organization that is in incredibly capable hands, and so I thank you for putting up with me for 4 years. So today's public session, we're going to receive the usual reports from the chairs of the committee. Our deputation, and I guess we're going to do a bit of mix of in-person and virtual for the purpose of deputation and voting. And then I guess we can now move to the public agenda items. Plural, there's more than one. There's a long list of them there. I guess I'm not going to go through them. Can we have a declaration of conflict of interest of anyone? Hearing none. So, subject to anyone have anything on the agenda they would like held. And I guess we do have deputations. So 8B is automatic hold. Adele.
Could we hold 7B? I just had a couple of comments, and I would like to recognize some of the finance team.
Of course, 100%. Anybody else? The directors on, John?
I'd like to hold, Mr. Chair, I'd like to hold 9A and 9C, please.
Okay. Any other directors? Can't see their hands, so you left a flag for me. Okay, great, thank you. So we need a motion to approve the agenda and any unheld items. Adele, seconded by Debbie. Oh, Brian. Brian actually put up his hand, so I'll call on him. All those, any comments? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Where do we go to next? So we're at 7. I've got to get my agenda back in front of me. Okay, 7B is our first item held. Madam Imrie.
Thank you. So on behalf of BIFAC, I am pleased to recommend the audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2022. BIFAC did review these statements in detail with our audit partner and audit manager earlier this morning, and I just wanted to highlight that we do have a clean audit opinion, and KPMG's audit finding report did not identify any issues that this board needed to be concerned about, nor were there any control deficiencies that were identified by our auditors. So I think that's important for us to highlight. I did have an in-camera conversation with our audit partner and manager, and they found that this year's audit was very smooth. In fact, the smoothest that they've been involved in the 3 years that they've been auditing TCHC. And they were really pleased with the timeliness and responsiveness of the staff. So I wanted to congratulate Nagesh and his incredibly hardworking team, which includes Raymond Yip, Cindy Chen, Tony Zhu, Joy Webster, Christina Siobatura, Grace Liu, Parvin Vij, Noel Chung, and Corey Long, and thank them very much. These people work very hard, and they're usually the unsung heroes, and I just wanted it to be made public that it is a team effort. And so I would like to say thank you very much.
Here, here. Do you need a motion to approve the audit? Yes. I would have thought so. So Adele moved, seconded. Nick, any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Excellent. 8B, and I think we have a delegation on 8B. We're just waiting to hook the person in.
I believe Ms. Wilkinson is in the meeting. Catherine, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
You have 5 minutes for your deputation, anytime you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just want to take a moment to thank the outgoing members on the board of directors. Thank you for choosing to serve Toronto Community Housing and our tenants, and wish you well in your future endeavors. So I'm speaking to item 8B. The corporation did not comply with AOTA compliance requirements for its website. And faced with a compliance deadline, management proposed the most effective and expedient way to comply was by permanently removing all board materials and providing stakeholders with agendas and minutes only. This places the onus on stakeholders to ask Toronto Housing for reports which will be provided at your convenience. Stakeholders do not serve you. The board was put in an untenable situation, potentially facing $100,000 daily compliance fines for the shareholder, the corporation, and for the directors and officers up to $50,000 per day if they did not approve the recommendations. AOTA legislation is not new. This compliance matter originated in 2013 at the Governance Committee, where the city manager made it clear to the CEO the shareholder expected the corporation to comply with AOTA legislation. It was not optional. My apologies. AOTA stands for the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. In 2013, the Governance Committee directed management to include AOTA compliance in their annual reporting. And in 2015, they again requested that the compliance certificate address areas of compliance beyond financial compliance. And in 2016, the CEO of the corporation committed to expanding the items on the annual compliance certification and would certify compliance with AOTA and MFIPA reporting requirements going forward. MFIPA stands for Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This did not happen. The board did its due diligence. After multiple requests from the Governance Committee and a commitment from the CEO to comply, TCH failed to provide annual AOTA compliance reporting. They did not act quickly to mitigate the risk, and here we are 10 years later up against the AOTA website compliance deadline of June 30th, 2023. In a previous report to BIFAC and board on this matter, there was an additional recommendation to permanently remove all board and committee materials over 1 year old from its website. This is unacceptable, and the board should reverse that decision. And aside, this contradicts the proposal to restore files from 2004 to 2011. As a publicly funded corporation, we have a responsibility to provide accessible, transparent reporting, and in so doing, to be held accountable by the shareholder and our stakeholders. As a direct result of non-compliance, we now have to pay the price to repost board materials from 2004 to 2011, as they were exempt from AOTA requirements, and then convert and restore the bare minimum of agendas and minutes from 2011 to 2020. This means for an unspecified period of time, all that will appear on the board meeting portion of the corporation's website from 2004 to 2020 will be agendas and minutes. The annual report to the shareholder did not indicate TCH had financial difficulties complying with AOTA legislation. So I have some recommendations for the board to consider. Number one, management to report back on steps that will be put in place going forward to protect the shareholder, the corporation, its directors and officers from being put at risk due to non-compliance by this corporation, be it financial or otherwise. Number two, direct management to provide the annual compliance certificate information beyond financial requirements that include AOTA and MFIPA reporting or other appropriate agencies and legislation. Number three, staff to provide the necessary resources and funding to convert and permanently restore the institutional board meeting materials from 2012 to 2020, report back on materials that cannot be made AOTA compliant, and provide a timeline for completion. Anything less is unacceptable. Thank you for your consideration.
No, great, thank you, Catherine, appreciate it. Jag, maybe we can just get you to speak quickly to, on this issue? On the same topic? Oh, okay, so let's go to the next deputant first, sorry. Yeah.
Ms. Birch, I understand that you wanted to depute in relation to this matter, Kathy, and I see Ms. Birch is in the meeting. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you?
You're on mute. What's going on here?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
You're on mute, Kathy. Birch, hello. We can't hear you.
I can hear.
So
We can't in the room. That's strange. Can you just give us a second while we figure this out? Shows her on mute. Can we take her off mute here? Who's the meeting host? You want to try now?
Okay, testing.
Hey! Okay,
There
you
we
get to
go.
start again, obviously. Sorry about that, but thank you.
All right. Thank you, and I hope you take my words seriously today. The base of this item is about compliance to website accessibility standards. The standard is in place to ensure people with vision impairments have access to websites too, so that they are not discriminated against as a human right for people with disabilities. This report appears to be more about the duck and weave to avoid providing the standard and more about the fines and the non-compliance of $100,000 a day for the corporation, plus the fines for board members and shareholders. Then about doing the right thing and providing the documents within the standard. You will hear the costs are about $500,000 to get these documents converted. And there's approximately, I think Paula advised us that it was roughly 8,000 documents. So let's look at reality for a second. So at $500,000, that's about 5 days worth of fines. Instead of, and putting all this effort into how not to provide, why are we not making about how we are going to provide? it's not about eliminating barriers, it's about eliminating getting fines. This is, we've been through multiple CEOs, we've been through multiple staff people, multiple people reporting on compliance, and it's getting shoved under the rug. Our path brought this issue up in 2017 and worked with management and staff with a plan to meet compliance that was developed that would have brought the documents to standards, and then had a provision to catch up from previous years. Unfortunately, none of that happened. This report opts to take materials off the site in order to achieve compliance, but this is at the cost of transparency and independent access to public records. Again, getting away from providing independent accessibility for people with vision impairment disabilities, a core principle of AODA. We know we've had the multiple CEOs, multiple boards, spinning cycles of staff, but it has to stop somewhere. And the longer it drags out, the more expensive it gets. And the proof is in the 500,000 that it's going to estimated to cost right now. So how is that fiscally, legislatively, or morally responsible? When I deputed at governance about this report, it fell on deaf ears. The committee did not require management to go to the city manager to see if this was acceptable by our shareholder, and they didn't ask for a detailed plan to provide for people with disabilities. Instead, they put their energies in how to not provide by rubber stamping the report before you today. We've tried to address this issue with senior management and the CEO, but unfortunately, Mr. Sharma decided to delay our meeting until after this board meeting. So we're trying to help. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to help find answers. But we're not going to help find answers that take away transparency and institutional memory of this corporation. That's a disservice to the public, to the tenants, to the stakeholders, the shareholder, everyone. Therefore, the RPATH committee strongly urges you not to accept the report as is. Hold management accountable by directing them to develop a detailed plan, including timelines, to provide accessible information in compliance and in the spirit of AODA standard, and report to this board and make sure it is executed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Any directors have any questions or comments for Kathy? Okay, great. Thank you for your deputation. And maybe I'll just ask, I don't know if you're the right one, Jag, but whomever, just to speak to 8B and the efforts of the organization on this point.
Thank you, Chair Murphy. I'll start by saying we are absolutely committed to meeting with Ms. Birch. We are doing some background information, collecting the appropriate background information in preparation for that meeting, and I'll hand it over to Ms. Knight to provide some further clarity.
Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair. The report is written as accurate in terms of there are 8,000 documents that we would need to convert to the cost of 500,000. So we had made a business decision to make the agendas and the minutes available in accessible format, with then an opportunity and a disclaimer saying that there are attachments and they could be requested to be received in the accessible format. We know this is consistent with other jurisdictions, which is why we decided to go that route. And at the same time, we're in the process of launching a new website, which will have much more accessibility features to it, which will enhance the overall accessibility experience for our tenants. It's a difficult decision that we've had to make to not put the entire documents up. Often they're not able to be made AODA compliant if there's charts, for example. So we've looked across other jurisdictions to see what would be best at this time, and this is how we've landed on this decision. that at this point is as much as we can do outside of working more closely with the city. We know everybody's struggling with this, not just us as an organization. We've had lots of conversations, but we're really just trying to make our best effort for that period from 2012 to 2020. And everything going forward, we now put through a process within the organization to ensure they're AODA compliant as they're put on the website. For example, board meetings and reports, etc. So beyond 2021, it will be continuously compliant in the new website format, HTML.
Can I just ask what the, what's the city doing, our shareholder?
So through the chair, I can respond to that question. So they are putting the agendas and the minutes up in HTML font, which is compliant from an accessibility perspective. They have reports up there as well. Not all of them are compliant, and they're working through that right now. We have a meeting actually set up with them in a couple of weeks because there are other technologies that are emerging that we may be able to use. They're looking at them. So this is an evolving field that we're trying to work with them on as well. So we do have a meeting in a couple of weeks on that to discuss more fully. We know that other jurisdictions, there's a mix. Some have just agendas, some have board meetings, minutes, some have full reports, but it's not consistent.
Sorry, just to be clear, that's all looking backwards,
Yes.
right? So,
And going forward, the city's doing the same as everything is compliant, and we're actually following the standards that they've set.
any other questions or comments from directors? John?
Tim?
Yeah, you're next, Brian, after John.
So I know there's a lot of new faces here at TCHC since I've been here, but so we've never put these things, like this refers to 2020. We haven't put our agendas and reports up on the website?
No, they've always been on the website, but the new legislation asks that they be accessible in an accessible format. So if a tenant who has visual impairment or blind needs to access the information, they can use a screen reader. And to be able to do that, it has to be in a specific format that hasn't been done previously. So we've remediated a lot. What the term we use is remediated. But to do the documents from the period of 2012 to 2020, there's 8,000 of those documents. And we would need to use an external vendor, which we know would be to a cost of 500,000. And the other piece was,
Sorry.
yeah.
So the legislation was brought in when?
The date of the 2013? I think it's 2013. Yeah.
And did it require that, at that time, did it require that all documents be in that format from that point in time going forward?
It gave us an opportunity to start to do that work. It hadn't. I wasn't here at that period, at that time. We just took this project on not long after.
No, so did the Ontario government require from
Yes.
2000? They did,
Yes.
right? So
2012.
So to the CEO, you've worked in 2 previous municipalities. Were they doing that, this kind of work?
Through the chair, what we're recommending is very much consistent to most municipalities where there are either, whether it be cost prohibitive or there may be documents that are very challenging to make accessible. So typically there is the opportunity for, if an individual is looking for that particular document, that they would be provided specifically and be converted at that point in time for based on request, as opposed to going through the exercise of making all documents.
So that legislation was brought in by a previous government. And is the current government aware of the costs that are going to be incurred by all the municipalities and public agencies?
Through the chair, I don't.
That's kind of an existential question.
Well, I mean, because we know governments, reverse decisions by previous governments all the time, right? And so I don't know if it's been has it been a topic of discussion among city managers, among CEOs in public administration?
Through the chair, I believe it's yes, it has been a conversation amongst municipal leaders. And what you can see is that some of the decisions that have been made by municipalities, similar to what's being recommended here, such that they can ensure that the documents can be made accessible on request, but not necessarily going back.
And
For example, there'll be consulting studies that will be quite large and quite complicated. And as Ms. Knight had indicated, depending on whether there's graphs or other items in them, the requirement in order to make them compliant can be challenging for, and statistically, documents that are referenced very infrequently. And so that's the balance of ensuring that there's a mechanism while trying to balance the cost as well.
Right, okay. All right. And so the solution that we're seeking to do is going to cost some time to put documents up the best that we can, right?
So the solution we're proposing is from 2012 to 2021, we'll have the agendas and the minutes of those meetings in accessible format. They will go on our new website, which will be launched in July. And if anybody would like reports that are attached, then we would make them. We would have a note to say if you require a report that's attached to these minutes, we will be happy to provide an accessible format. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Ryan, I think you were next, and then Adele.
I was just going to say that management and myself, Kathy, sent an email, and we're more than willing. I know we're trying to gather the information from the city to be consistent with the city's approach to this, and certainly aware of the cost impacts on this. But I think the staff, and as I said, as from governance, we're quite willing to sit down and try to achieve as much as possible, as quickly as possible. But there are significant challenges in doing that, and we certainly appreciate, the time frame that it's gone on. Although many of us weren't around, until much later than this. This came to a process, and I can't comment on why things weren't done sooner. But I think everybody's very much aware of the need and the obligation, and would be more than happy to work with our path and Kathy to try and achieve this as quickly as possible and in the best way possible. So I've already told Kathy I'd be pleased to meet with her to see how this could be done as best that the organization can do, considering the constraints that we have.
Tim, if I may, it's Debbie.
Yeah,
I've lost you.
Adele, it's Adele, then you, Debbie.
Thanks.
I just had a quick question. On page 4 of your report, it talks about like 300 hours of staff time to convert to HTML. This is a little off topic, but is it an opportunity to hire tenants or, especially young tenants for a summer job to do this instead of staff? I don't know if that would be less expensive, but.
We haven't explored that. It requires some expertise. Not that we wouldn't have it out, but to do it in a way that's efficient with the tools that we have. We actually remediated 2,000 documents ourselves to get us to where we are today on the website, and that took a considerable amount of time and expertise within the team. So that's why we're recommending it would need to go to people who are specialized in doing this work. But it's not to say we couldn't explore that and certainly take that away.
I just think young people are usually quite proficient when it comes to that. Yeah. And I'm not sure what's to be covered at this meeting that's being held after the fact, but is there any need that we defer this decision until the meeting's held, or I'm not really sure what's being covered there?
If we were to defer it, we have a deadline with the ministry to have this complete by the end of June, which is why we brought it to TCHC in here.
So if anything comes up at that meeting that Brian's holding with Kathy and whomever, you can adapt.
Yes, we can make an amendment.
Okay,
exactly.
Thank you.
Okay. Debbie?
Thanks, Tim. Paul, I'm just confirming. You say between 2012 and 2021 is where the concern is. Does that mean then that all documents posted since 2021, including complex reports, are AODO compatible?
Yes, we've started to convert those. Sometimes if they are very complex with graphs and charts, it's a little difficult. But where there's text, absolutely, that's the work that we've done.
Oh, So this continues to be a concern then,
Yes.
moving forward.
Yes. Yeah, but there are
I
new
see. So-
technologies. There are new technologies that are emerging. Sorry, through the chair, that may help us going forward, and that's what we're really starting to explore. Is to see as the things are advancing to help us do this work more proficiently. But right now, there still are concerns that we have with some reports, for development reports, for example, that may have maps and charts and those kinds of things. But when it's text, it's much easier.
I understand the complexity of it. My concern is that 2 years down the road, we'll be having this very same conversation if we don't now start to ensure that we're compliant with all documents.
There is a. There,
But I think,
sorry, through the
sorry,
chair.
I think I agree with. Go ahead, sorry.
Excuse me, sorry, through the chair. I was just going to add, there is, within the legislation, we are able to put a disclaimer that is allowable if content is very difficult. It asks that we make our best effort with what's feasible. So there is language within the legislation that actually allows us to have some leeway on very complex documents that will not put us in a non-compliant. Darren, if you want to add to that.
I just wanted, through the chair, to address the concern about this risk on a go-forward basis and identify that governance staff are working with report writers going forward to make sure that, one, the reports that we get from the report writers themselves are AODA compliant in the format they're provided. And then our governance staff, when we receive those reports, we'll do a check on the report before it's posted to the website as a control to ensure that that is the case. So going forward, we have a strategy to ensure that future reports that we put to the website are compliant with the legislation. It's really just this defined period between 2012 and 2021 that we're taking a different approach about. And that period won't grow.
That was my initial question.
Yeah.
But that's not what I heard from Paula. That was exactly what my question was. From 2021 forward, so 2022, we are compliant, and I heard no, that there are some reports like maps and graphs that we are not able to be compliant about, and I understand the language and that AODA allows it, and my organization are absolutely in very similar situation. But again, I think that we heard from both Catherine and Kathy that we should be looking to be as compliant as soon as possible, as opposed to putting it off to future until technology is more user friendly. I'm not understanding, other than cost. I understand the cost issue. Why it is that we are looking to not be as compliant as possible. I'll shut up. I know Marcel wants to say something.
Sorry.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah,
you
go ahead,
finished?
Marcel.
Okay, with all the things that you've been exploring, has anybody reached out to CNIB, because they would be the experts in converting documents that are readable for people with vision loss or vision impairment? Has anybody reached out to them?
Through the chair, if I may, right at the beginning of this process, when I initially had the project, I did reach out to them. I've worked a lot with the CNIB in the past, and we're using a technology that is consistent with the way in which they would ask us to convert in a website environment. So it typically is HTML. They also have their own language at CNIB called DAISY. We do not have the ability to do that, but HTML is acceptable in the format that we would put it in our new website. So we have had that conversation.
But sorry, thanks, Marcel. Sorry, I think there's a bit of confusion. I think it's worth clarifying. Going forward, we will be AODA compliant. Yes or no?
Yes, going through the chair, we will be AODA compliant. The AODA actually provides for specific circumstances in dealing with complex documents. And essentially what the legislation provides is, in dealing with some complex documents where the technology doesn't make it accessible without a significant degree of investment, or perhaps the technology even makes it not possible to make it compliant, there are exemptions that exist in the legislation. And so to the extent that the legislation provides for those exemptions, we may have to take advantage of those legislative exemptions with respect to some certain small category of complex documents. But I just repeat the comment that Ms. Knight made, that to the extent that we can provide AODA compliant accessible documents to members of the public with visual impairments, we will do that.
Right, so our principle going forward is to be as compliant as possible, well, to be fully compliant and to provide as much access as possible, subject only to exceptions we can't, that we have to use because we just can't find a feasible way to make it accessible. Then then going backwards, we've provided certain aspects, and because of both cost and frankly probably the degree of use, we've said agendas, minutes are fully accessible. Documents, other documents are subject to conversion to accessible format when requested. And that is a compliant way to deal with the AODA going backwards. Someone tell me yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other director have a question or comment?
Yes, so then that begs the question that was asked by Adele, or implied by Adele. What is the focus then of Brian's meeting as chair of governance with Ms. Birch?
Through the chair, the request was to meet to revisit the discussion, and so we've agreed to meet. We're just continuing to collect the information from the City of Toronto and others to ensure we're prepared with the right information during that meeting.
And my guess is as technology improves, who knows, it may get easier to convert old documents both in time and money, and it may be an issue to be revisited if and when circumstances change, right?
I'm just not wanting us to give false hope to tenants about exactly what's we're going to be doing if we've already made the decision in terms of what's possible.
Okay, so, all right, so the report, 8B, now is it a motion to approve? Yeah, so just to be clear, we are approving this path in 8B. So, all right, so a motion. Nick, seconded. John, I need my screen back up. Okay, so we're gonna then, all right, so all those, we're 8B, right? So all those in favor of the motion to adopt the report? Carried, thank you so much. Next is 9A. I think, John, you wanted that one held, the OACH biannual update.
We did. We don't have any deputants, do we? No? Okay. So, yes, I wanted to hold OACH because we have in person here, we have the new acting director of the new Office of the Commissioner of Housing Equity, Melanie Martins, and we're joined by Summer Nudell, who did such a great job of filling in before Melanie came back. So just I think we're, as I've said before, we're in very good hands in terms of managing the arrears portfolio. And Melanie, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Campbell. Not Chair, Director Campbell, I should say. So I'm happy to just take questions, or I've prepared a presentation. So do you want me to go through like a high overview of the report?
I think that would be great, right? Because there's some directors here who haven't been exposed to this for a while, and they haven't heard from you, so that would be great.
Okay, great. Okay, so through the chair, I am pleased to present the OACH biannual report. This report includes the OACH outcomes for the period of July 1st to December 31st, 2022. It also includes an analysis of the data that was collected in all of 2022 from the family portfolio, which can be found in Appendix 2 of the report. Of note, at the last board meeting, I presented the results of the OCH's work in our 2022 work plan. And for that reason, today I'm going to focus my presentation on the analysis of the family portfolio. So for context, when the OCH's mandate expanded to include referrals from the family portfolio on January 1st of last year, the referral rate to the OCH increased significantly from previous years. This resulted in a backlog of files waiting to be referred to the office. This had an impact on arrears across the regions and on OCH resources, as there were more files than could be completed within the 45-day timeline outlined in the OCH's terms of reference. We operated for 1 year under this mandate and committed to gather data on the family portfolio in order to understand the nature of the files themselves and to provide an analysis of what we found. In particular, what was the content of the resolution, and did it differ from the content normally found in files with a senior or vulnerable tenant? Historically, the OCH's specialized service is centered around supporting tenants with vulnerabilities, which has included referrals to community agencies for additional or wraparound support for the sake of maintaining a tenancy in the longer term. With respect to the files which were received from the family portfolio in 2022, we found these interventions were not warranted in many instances. In addition, we learned that the resolutions garnered for the files from the family portfolio were such that many could be resolved by the frontline staff in the regions. Not until we examined the outcomes of all referrals from the family portfolio did we realize a process change was in order, as the OCH did not have the capacity to work on so many files, but additionally, that the OCH was simply not needed in many instances. In all of 2022, the OCH closed 462 files from the family portfolio. Of the 462 files, the EROs were successful in resolving the arrears in 317 instances. Only 51 of these cases required a referral to a community agency for support. We found that the resolutions for the remaining cases were straightforward, with 266 cases, approximately 60%, being managed through local repayment agreements paid by the tenant and/or their families, or through accessing the Housing Stabilization Fund. As these resolutions are part of the tenant service coordinator's function within the arrears collection process, we determined that these resolutions might be obtained in the regions if the TSCs were successful in engaging the tenants, negating the need for an OCH referral. To support TCHC to resolve these files, the OCH has suggested that the following changes be made. First, the use of a stage 1 checklist as a screening tool. Second, coaching, mentoring, and training of TCHC frontline staff. And third, EROs being assigned specifically to regions to foster positive relationships between TSCs and EROs, and to ensure EROs are regionally specific subject matter experts with the connections to the communities they are working within. And lastly, that the OCH will continue working with TCHC in the review of the arrears collection process. This work is already underway, with the N4 checklist going live on February 13th, and 12 training sessions have already been completed in the first quarter of this year, with 150 frontline staff attending. Our next step is to evaluate the effectiveness of these changes, and the OCH is hopeful that these measures will have a positive result for both tenants and TCHC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Adele, you almost always have one. Adele.
My reputation precedes me.
It's an excellent one, though.
I question that. You you have 3 different portfolios. I just wondered, what is the vulnerable portfolio? Like, it's in the first little.
Yeah. So, 1.
1.1. You've got seniors, you've got family, and then you've got vulnerable. And I'm just not familiar with what vulnerable is, because I would think that vulnerable is part of family and seniors.
So thank you through the chair. So when we first had our mandate, we only dealt with senior and vulnerable tenants. We didn't deal with tenants from the family portfolio. So how vulnerability was identified was there was different factors. So it was a tenant who required extra support, so referrals to a community agency. We identify them now as tenants who are receiving ODSP as well, because they've already been assessed through ODSP as requiring additional support. So that's how we're identifying vulnerable at this point, separate from the family.
And so how large would vulnerable be? Like, you talk about 31.
It's a small percentage of the referrals we're receiving at this point, because I think there's some vulnerable people who are still being classified as family, and we don't recognize they're vulnerable until they actually arrive at the office.
That's my question.
Yeah.
Okay, and can we go back to the training?
Yes.
As long as I've been on this board, I've heard about the OACH approach. And at what point are the frontline staff going to be trained in the OACH approach? And how do you determine success? Like when you say 150 frontline people attend your training sessions, like at what point do we determine that you've taught TCHC to deal with the OACH approach and that they're doing it in-house as opposed to on a referral basis?
So
Bit of a loaded question, but.
I'll try to answer it through the chair. So I hear what you're saying, Adele, through the chair. I hear that because I've been at OACH since it opened. But I think we have, it's a little different this time because we have a lot of support from the senior management as we're rolling out the training. And we're tackling it not just one training by year, we're doing it bi-monthly, and we actually plan to try to sit down and figure out how to measure it. I do have a meeting scheduled with Nadia and TCHC so we can start looking at, do we see a decrease in certain areas? I know we just did a training on Housing Stabilization Fund, and that's teaching the frontline staff how to access Ontario Works and get that funding without it coming to OACH to address the arrears. And I've been told by managers they're seeing an increase in pay directs from Ontario Works. They're seeing their staff actually implementing those new strategies that we've taught them. So I'm hopeful this might be the opportunity, and I guess we'll have to work together to figure out how we're going to measure that and report it back.
Okay, and I think the measuring is important because I think it's year after year. There's, goals about training, but really no success measures are implemented okay. So that's coming at some point, or?
Yes, through the chair, yes. So I'm hoping we can report on that, like with our next biannual report. We'll have some measurements or we'll have some data to provide you with how we see that going. I'll also just say we're doing something we've never tried before, which is coaching and mentoring. So we've set up bi-weekly meetings where we're meeting with TCHC frontline staff, and we have an open meeting where they can drop in to start getting advice on cases and to start case conferencing before a referral is needed to our office. So we've never done that before, but we are getting some traction with that. We had our first one 2 weeks ago, and we have our second one this week, and staff are actually attending and coming and inquiring about how they can do better at the front line without the need to come to our office.
Okay, I think
So I've got Nick and then Brian.
important.
Thanks, and I think my question sort of nicely dovetails with Adele's comment. I appreciate sort of all the statistics because there's lots of good sort of slicing and dicing, and in a lot of cases, actually, I think the percentages and absolute numbers are quite low in a good way, which sort of then draws my attention to some of the numbers that are high and escalating, and the area sort of I zoomed in on is page 6 of 17, the chart regarding administrative delays and inefficient use of resources. And I'm not sure if this is like a trainable element. When I look at serve the notice to terminate the tenancy in accordance with the arrears collection process timelines went from 35, and I assume this is like negative in the sense it's getting worse, but it's gone from 35% to 73%. So 259 out of 353 cases was not served in accordance with the process and the timelines. Am I reading that correctly? So that, and then the next one, make direct contact with tenant in the first month of arrears, gone 35% to 61%. To me, these are sort of pretty basic, routine, sort of not really even judgment. It's sort of tick the box, sort of do this at this time. And it just seems striking that it's doubled, and then now sort of in absolute terms and in sort of percentage terms is quite overwhelming as a percentage of cases. I'm not sure if that's trainable. Like, it seems like something seems very trainable, but then it brings questions: is it training or is it competency? So I'm not sure if you have a response or a comment on that, but that sort of strikes me as something that stands out across the broader backdrop of actually things generally feel like they're improving and getting low percentage numbers, low absolute numbers. I think I've talked long-winded enough about that.
Yeah. So is that a Nadia response or yeah?
So through the chair, thank you for the question. Absolutely, it demonstrates an area of concern for us. I do want to acknowledge that staff transitioned to opening hubs at that point as well, and so there were some factors there where the TSCs have played a significant role in providing in-space customer service, and so that's a factor. We're also still working through some kinks with homes in terms of getting the N4s processed in a timely manner. And finally, I would comment that we are looking at our arrears collection process. So one of the challenges we have is actually meeting the timeline of getting the N4 out. But what we've been able to identify in working with finance is sometimes the payments come in late. And so we haven't necessarily issued N4s waiting for us to confirm whether the payment has come in. And so in the updated arrears collection process, we are looking at timelines to see if the 13 to 15 days is not realistic for the TSCs to deliver on. And that's what this is measuring us against. So we'll be in touch in terms of updating that process.
Have we identified sort of KPIs for those numbers coming down in a certain time frame?
So through the chair, we work closely with OACH to actually look at different interventions to actually address some of these concerns. At the next TSC, we actually have our response report. So future state, we're going to align our response report with the OACH report so you could see directly in writing what it is we're doing to address the concerns. But it is something that we're working on now, including much of what Melanie mentioned in terms of the case conferencing and really supporting the tenants. We're also working closely with finance to try and determine whether we can look at the payment processing and whether there's some efficiencies there. And finally, when we have the updated arrears collection process, we should be able to address some of the timeline issues that are no longer realistic given the new home system and the reality of working in the offices for the staff.
Yeah, I guess mine is more kind of one level more basic, which is, you know, and that all sounds appropriate, but I guess what we've all been struggling with is how the measurement of success in the processes inside the system. And so it's like, you know, is it a realistic to say, could we reduce that by 50% in a year as a key performance indicator? I'm not asking you to sort of say yes to that concept now, but I think what the board has been struggling with all along is measuring how we deal with these issues and then judging whether we're doing better or worse and what are the measures that are appropriate. Because I accept all the issues that you've articulated can be factors in how or why we're doing better, but at the end, you know, I'm a big believer in either OKRs or KPIs as a way to drive change in a system. So that was more comment than question. I think, Brian, I apologize, I interrupted.
No apology needed, Sim. Mine's along the same line, really, because I'd like to, and I'm not sure from Nadia or from through this report, to look at what policies and procedures that are actually we've changed internally that will improve those to give us drive those outcomes that you're talking about in the KPIs, because I'd like to understand, you know, the systemic things that have been identified and how do we internally change those to improve the results. So if we could comment either in a joint report or by either OACH or through staff, you know, to identify what are those changes, so we can then measure, did those changes actually result in improvements or not, and maybe they look good, but they really didn't achieve what we wanted them to achieve. So
through the chair, I'd like to comment on that, and Melanie, jump in after if needed. But we are undertaking a Lean Six Sigma review of the entire arrears collection process.
Whose idea was that?
I wonder. And we've identified some significant areas of improvement and opportunity for growth. We are following up with a session with finance specific to arrears in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be finalizing the recommended changes, both to the arrears collection process, but also our systems and the processes that you're speaking to. So that is something we're currently looking at. The other piece that we've put in place more recently is in the restructuring, we removed a centralized team called Program Services from the operations team, and that team played a significant role in providing supports and training to frontline staff in the tenancy management pillar, as well as answering their questions and really providing an opportunity to be the one-stop shop to address some of the concerns that the frontline staff were having. I currently have a posting out to address that gap, and we're hoping to replenish a bit of a team that will do exactly that. So not only identify process changes, but provide the training to staff and actually implement the changes so we start to see the KPIs improving. So there's a few different things coming down the pipe, and we hope by the next report we'll start to see some of the changes. To Chair Murphy's point, though, I think I need to work with Melanie in terms of establishing what those changes will lead to with targets. I don't think we've done that to date.
Any other
Thank you.
director? Okay, I think we, John?
Sure, just, so when we expanded the mandate, which maybe was a good thing, maybe not a good thing, when we expanded the mandate of OACH to include all, the family portfolio and anybody that's running into arrears difficulties, the caseload there went up dramatically, and we're seeing it that at least in the third and fourth quarter it went down. Has that trend continued, or is it leveled off, or? So I guess I'll ask Melanie to answer that. Or is staff doing or managing more of this internally before they're being turned over to you?
Thank you for the question. So through the chair, yes, I actually looked at those numbers before the meeting because I wanted to see. So we implemented the new stage 1 checklist on February 13th, and the point of it was to now we're doing a new process where we used to just accept any referral from TCHC last year, so we wouldn't review it prior, we would just accept it and work on it. Now we're actually screening it, so we're making sure the arrears collection process was followed by staff before we'll accept it. So if not, we're sending it back, recommending they work on it. And we're finding that the checklist really is helping us to take the right referrals and reduce the numbers. So from February 13th to April 13th of last year, we got 273 referrals. And for the same period this year, we're down to 133 referrals. So it's gone down 50% from last year. So I think the checklist is working, and we'll be reporting out on that in our next report.
And Nadia, the question for you. So, Adele referred to, the constant training that goes on, but you have new people that have to be trained that come on all the time too. And so, over the course of a year, how many new people, or what percentage are new people that need to be trained in dealing with arrears?
So through the chair, I don't have the exact number on attrition rates for the TSCs, but what I can say is a significant amount of our training over the last 2.5 years were done remotely due to COVID and staff working remotely, and we found that to be a bit of a gap. So in working with OACH and with the centralized teams we currently have in place, we're starting to bring training back in person.
Great.
And we're seeing that starting to pay off in dividends. So not only the new staff, but we also have staff that have been around for a while that had to be trained on new procedures and processes remotely, and we found that to be a bit of a gap for staff. So we're hoping that the in-person training can address that, and I'll get back to you in terms of the exact attrition rates annually on the staff.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I think we're at the point, motion to receive, I think, is what we need. So John, do you want to move as seconded by Nick? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And you also had 9B or C? C, sorry, 9C.
Sorry, is there any discussion that goes on at the Police Services Board in regard to the report?
So through the chair, we have the Senior Director of the Community Safety Unit, Al Britton, who could advise on that. So Al, I don't know if you heard the question.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And through the chair, Director Campbell, on June 22nd, the report will be presented to the Toronto Police Services Board. Myself and our Senior Manager, Mona Bottoni, will be attending on behalf of our unit to answer any questions.
Okay, and so in regard to the staffing, can you tell me and tell the board, because I know we discussed this at the Tenant Services Committee, I believe, can you tell me, what your full complement of officers is and what you're at now?
Yes, through the chair, Director Campbell, our full complement of special constables is 157 special constables. We're currently at 135 special constables. And the reason for this is we have obviously dealt with attrition over the last few years, where several of our staff move on to roles with police services and with other special constable agencies. But as of today, we are 22 special constables down, so we have 22 vacancies.
And wasn't there a review of the CSU being undertaken by the city, or what, can you just refresh my memory there? I thought that's why we were sort of prohibited from ramping up the staffing.
Yes, through the chair, Director Campbell, there is currently a review of the CSU mandate being conducted by the City of Toronto. CSU is fully prepared to assist in any way with that review. We also have the Community Safety Advisory Committee, the subcommittee of the Tenant Services Committee. And again, CSU is actively assisting with all information in regards to that. The only staffing hold that is on right now is the board approved holdback of 12 staff for the deployment to the last 3 VRP sites, which we've complied with. So based on that math, we would have 22 vacancies, 10 which we can hire for, and 12 which are on hold. And the 10 would be part of the next class that we would be hiring for.
And the last question is, so when is the city going to be done with the review? I imagine if you're down, if you're short, right now you're short 22 constables, that must have an impact on coverage and community safety.
So through the chair, Al, maybe I can take this one. We don't have the exact timeline. They've been delayed a few different times. That was one of the things I needed to get to this week. So I will be following up, and I can provide an update to you directly.
Okay. So I said that was the last question, but it's not the last question. We've done, I know we delayed the tenant survey, right? We were talking about this recently. And there's a tenant survey coming up in the first quarter of next year, right? And so we don't have any sort of, we don't have any sort of recent feedback on how tenants feel about safety in their communities.
So through the chair, actually the questions on the tenant survey from 2 years ago did have questions related to safety.
But it's 2 years old now, right?
Yes, and we will be asking those questions again, so we can actually see trending when we do the survey again in the first quarter of 2024.
And so anecdotally, well, we have a call center. Like, do we have any sort of sense that from tenants that call in, that there's more calls coming in regard to community safety? There's more concern out there, or is it flatlined, or what can you tell me about that?
So through the chair, and certainly Al could speak to this more, we have the dispatch center data that we track. We also track the number of community safety incidents, and we report on that through the operational performance measures. So that is data that we're finding there's, for example, an increase in maybe attacks, but a decrease in shootings. All of that is information that's tracked. We also have our service quality indicators. It isn't across the city, it's in specific communities, and we do them quarter over quarter. So we do have real-time data that speaks to some concerns that tenants are bringing up about community safety. But Al, maybe you can expand on the dispatch center data.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, Director Campbell, our dispatch center is housed at 90 Wildcat, and it receives over 100,000 calls, not all for service, but many for information regarding other numbers to contact or who they should be reaching out to for certain needs, and our dispatch center facilitates that. Our special constables answered 87,496 incidents last year. Now, not all those would have been dispatched. Many would have been where they're doing directed patrols or wellness checks in communities and handle an incident as they were there. So the numbers are quite large over the calendar year. We're well over 100,000 calls in and 87,000 incidents responded to.
That's all I have in questions.
Adele?
Just a clarification question. There's other annual reports that reference surveys, and the top issues as far as maintenance and safety. So are you saying that that information is 2 years old, or what?
The tenant survey that we do annually will be 2 years old in November, and that's one element of how we review.
And is that the survey you're referring to in the annual reports? I don't have them in front of me, but there are a number of, like, the shareholder letter and
Yes.
those are.
Yeah, we only ever do it every 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
okay. That wasn't clear to me. I thought it was a 2022. Okay, thank you.
Any other director? Motion, do we have a motion to receive? Yeah.
Just a
Sorry, Tim, it's
Okay,
it's
go ahead, Debbie. Yeah.
Well, before you go, I just wanted to reiterate again that out of the 22 positions, 12 are being held until the review by the city and the subcommittee, and 10 you're able to hire. Is there a timeline for hiring, or what are the challenges in hiring those 10 positions that you are able to?
I think Al responded to that.
Yes, through the chair, Director Douglas, the 10 positions, what we have to do to hire is we have a full 8-week training program in a classroom. So we have to get a number that's sustainable to make it worthwhile to train the individuals, because with retention, a lot of time, the issues that we do face, quite often we'll hire 10, 12, and we'll lose 1 or 2 during the training. It unfortunately does happen. So we have to make sure we're up to the right number. So number of 10 to 12 is about the norm. So that 10 just became available recently because we did lose a couple to the police services. So we are looking at a class starting at the end of the summer in September to hire up to that number.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to receive.
Just one final comment.
John?
I had the pleasure of going out for
Did a ride-along?
ride-along, and it was, quite a number of months ago, but I would encourage any director that hasn't done so to do so, because it's a bit of an eye-opener. I'll be happy to move receipt of the report.
So moved. Seconder? Adele? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
I believe
Is it for the formal agenda, or do we?
I think Mr. Sharma had a matter of
Yeah, no,
other business.
Yeah. So I guess we normally would have a report from you, and I realized we didn't even have one of those. So let's have a report from the CEO.
Through the chair, there will be a formal report coming back to the board from me, but I missed the opportunity earlier to say a few words about you.
Oh.
So, if I may, thank you, Chair Murphy, not just for inviting me to speak as I step in, but for your years of service in this organization. Thank you on behalf of my colleagues and TCHC staff. You are an expert legal mind with decades of experience bringing public and private sectors together, delivering public assets and infrastructure. If anyone has had the pleasure or privilege of working with Tim, you know that he is a kind, thoughtful, forward-thinking leader who holds public interests above all else. When I joined this organization, I was the benefactor of those qualities, and with Tim's guidance, I am very proud of what this board and broader TCHC team has accomplished. With you as chair, we have successfully delivered on multiple tenants' first priorities, weathered the crisis of COVID-19 and Swansea Muse, and celebrated TCHC's 20th anniversary, crossing into the next 20 years of our history with a dedicated, compassionate group of leaders at the helm. A sincere thank you again for all of your contributions to Toronto community housing over the years. Your presence and guidance will be missed, but your impact will be felt long into the future. Thank you, sir.
Well, I hope one day to meet the person you described. Brian?
I just, and Jag stole my, but I guess I also wanted to add that, and I guess I would put forward a motion from the board to express our appreciation for your leadership for the organization, and I just wanted to say that I really appreciated working with you.
Oh, thank you.
Second that motion.
I would propose that motion of appreciation and thanks to Tim, and Debbie seconded that.
I'll vote against.
You'll be declared out of order.
Well, thank you. That's very kind.
Anyways, then, so we should ask all in favor,
Yeah.
just to record it.
Yeah.
Okay, again, really appreciate it, Tim.
Much so.
Is any other board business we need to conduct, or are we? I think that was the official agenda. Anything board member or staff want to highlight? Just share for fun.
I just wanted to appreciate the on-board document that came out, because I found that very, very, very appreciated and inspiring, with all the information and the work that's going on and the tenants involved. That document was very much appreciated by me.
Good document. Okay, I think we can motion to adjourn. John, Adele, all those in favor? Done. Thank you.